The jury for the defendant, Eric Menendez, is in the jury box. The jury for the defendant, Lyle Menendez, is in the audience. You folks have never had a chance to see each other before, so now you do. And we're now ready to resume with the trial. The people may call their first witness.
Your Honor, the people call Ms. Christine Nye to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please take the stand and state your name for the record.
Christine Nye,
And spell last name.
C-H-R-I-S-T-I-N-E, N-Y-E.
Ms. Nye, what do you do solely, please?
I'm a police dispatcher for the city of Beverly Hills.
How long have you been so employed?
6 years now.
On August the 20th of 1989, at approximately 11:47 p.m., did you receive a phone call from a male individual?
Yes, I did.
And did you, prior to coming here today, listen to a tape recording of the phone call to which I'm referring?
Yes, I did.
And was that tape recording an accurate reflection of the events that transpired that night?
Yes, it was.
And was your voice on that tape?
Yes, it was.
Counsel, if I could just interrupt, if you could turn on that microphone in front of you so we can hear you.
It is on.
Okay.
A second.
If you can either use the podium or use the microphone so that both juries can hear you, because your back is to one jury. Okay. All right.
Ms. Nye, on the dispatch are two voices which should be familiar to you. Aside, there's your voice, and then there's another voice of a man who appears to be someone in the room with you. Could you tell me who that was, please?
Yes, it was Nick Tatone.
Could you spell his last name for the court reporter?
Last name is T-A-T-O-N-E. He was my partner that night.
Your Honor, I have here two tapes, one for either jury. I'd like to mark them as people's 1 and 2, or 1A and 1B, or how does it?
Any exhibits will be marked just
1, 2, 3.
Just one, and the duplicates will be handled by the clerks.
All right.
If you have an exhibit, you can mark the exhibit 1, and the clerk will take care of the duplicates.
All right, so Your Honor, I have two exhibits, each of which I'm now marking as 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, may I have the first permission to play that tape?
Is it in the
Yes.
player?
Yes, it is.
All right. All right, go ahead. Is there a transcript of that tape?
Yes, Your Honor, may we approach, please, on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's proceed then. You may approach the witness.
Thank you.
And if you intend to play the tape, let me ask counsel, do you stipulate that the court reporter need not take down the proceedings as the tape is being played?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Yes, man, too.
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
I'm going to see what I was doing. I'm going to see what I was doing.
What happened?
I have a hysterical person on. I'm trying to get even further. I don't even know if we find it. Is the person still there?
What happened? We have you to 0. What happened? Who shot who? I don't hear anything. You came home and saw him who shot? You're in bed?
No, they're still in the house. The people that did the shooting.
Okay. Let me talk to Eric. Who is the person that was shot? My mom and my dad. Your mom and dad? Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with an ambulance. Okay, I gotta go. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't move. Hello, this is police department. Yeah. Okay, I want you to come outside. Okay, just come out the front door and you're my brother. You tell your brother, everybody that's come outside. Okay.
Ms. Nye, was that an accurate recordation of the events of that evening? Oh, sorry.
Yes, it was.
Now, in the tape, it appears that a phone call was made near the very end of the tape because you can hear the tones of a touch-tone phone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, was the house involved actually called back by the police department?
Yes, it was.
And how was it that the police department knew the phone number so that they could call back?
That comes in on our 911 screen. We get a 911 call. It gives us the phone number and the address on the screen.
So during the first phone call, was that information then flashed onto your screen?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a moment, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Knight, were you on duty the entire evening that night?
You know, I honestly don't remember what time I started, but I believe I started mid-evening. I'm not sure.
What is mid-evening?
About 10 o'clock.
Did you receive any phone calls prior to the 911 call reporting shots fired?
No.
Let me just finish.
I'm sorry.
Shots fired in the neighborhood or vicinity of the North Elm location.
No, we didn't.
So the first notice you had was this phone call that's
Mhm.
in People's One? Is that
Yes.
correct? Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Nye, you had been with the Beverly Hills Police Department how long back in 1989?
By then I was a little over 2 years.
All right. And during the 2 years, were you working as a dispatcher?
Yes.
And as a dispatcher, you would take calls about crimes, is that correct?
Yes.
And would it be fair to characterize this particular call as a highly emotional one?
Yes.
That is, based on your experience and during the time that you worked as a dispatcher for Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Was there any other contact with this residence on Beverly, with the people inside 722 North Elm Drive, other than what we heard on the tape recorder?
From my standpoint?
Yes,
No.
that you had.
No.
And did you yourself dial back the second call?
No, that was my partner.
And how long after the first call was that you dialed back, or your partner dialed back?
It was probably 20 to 30 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes?
I believe, well, I'm not certain. I really don't know the time frame there.
Do you have any recollection as to when units were dispatched to 722 North Elm Drive?
Immediately.
And do you have any recollection, based on what you were able to monitor, as to when those units actually arrived at the home?
They probably arrived within 1 to 2 minutes.
And do you think that, based on their arrival time at the home, you could be wrong about the time that might be passing?
Yes, I could be wrong. Now, I'm thinking in my mind they set up a perimeter before, but I'm not sure whether that's before they went in the house or before they asked us to call and have them come out. I mean, I'm really not certain.
All right, thank you very much.
Your Honor, may I approach, please?
Is any cross-examination
Oh.
by the defendant Lyle Menendez?
Yes, just You said you didn't receive any other calls that night relating to this matter, correct?
Correct.
Were there other dispatchers who would have been receiving calls relating to this matter?
Well, there were only two of us there. That was myself and Nick Tatone, up until about 10 o'clock that night.
And so he could have been receiving calls from other people while you were handling this?
Oh, yes, he could have been, yes.
So you're speaking for yourself?
Well, can I just say one thing? We did mention the fact, why didn't anyone ever call us on that we got no shooting calls at all? We talked about that night, because
And,
that's unusual.
and do you know whether any other calls were, any documentation was made as to whether any calls were received that night?
No, I don't know for a fact.
Okay. Have a group of documents, I'll ask you marked as
Exhibit 2.
Exhibit 2. May I approach a witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Showing you Exhibit 2. Do you know what that is?
That's, yeah, I saw this prior to coming in here. Just times of when people were dispatched.
And that's a document that relates to this case, correct?
Correct.
And that shows that the first call was received on what time?
23:47.
And the next activity that's indicated in your records is what?
Well, the paramedics were dispatched
What time were they dispatched?
at 23:48,
And what time was the callback made?
at 23:51.
So it wasn't 20 to 30 minutes, was it?
No, it wasn't.
How long was it before the callback was made?
Within 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Could I see that, please? Thank you. And on the second page, does it also indicate that some neighbors called in?
Yes, this was after the fact.
Okay, what time did neighbors first call in?
00:43, which would be 1:45
Quarter to 1 on which date?
on, that would be August 21st.
And you received your call shortly before midnight?
Mm-hmm,
And this call from a neighbor came in shortly after midnight, correct?
yes,
There were other calls there from neighbors later on?
yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any redirect?
Just briefly, the document Peoples 2, which,
Exhibit 2.
excuse me, Exhibit 2, was about the defense attorney district. Could you explain to me how this document is prepared, if you know?
I don't,
All right.
no.
And it is the entry here about the callback being at 21:51, does that refresh your memory as to when, in fact, the callback was made to 722 North Elm?
Well, yeah, now that I see it, it was almost 4 years ago, but yes.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else from either counsel?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. People call Mrs. Avril Crum to the stand.
Sit down, relax, and tell us your name.
I'm Avril Crom, Avrilekrom.
Okay, Mrs. Crum, would you just sit back, please, and take a deep breath?
Okay. Thanks.
Do you remember the night of August the 20th of 1989?
Yes.
And sometime that evening, did you hear some noises that caught your attention?
Yes.
Could you tell us what you heard, please?
I had heard some sounds going off, and I thought that there were Chinese firecrackers.
Okay. Mrs. Crum, where were you physically located when you heard these noises?
I was in my bedroom.
Now, where do you live in relationship to the Menendez home?
I'm 2 houses down. There's one house in between the 2 houses.
Would you be 2 houses closer to Wilshire or closer to Sunset?
To Wilshire.
And you were in your bedroom, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have any windows open in your bedroom that night?
Yes, it was a hot night, and all the windows were open.
Do you remember about what time it was that you heard the noises?
It was between 10 and 10:15.
Is there a way that you can remember what time it was?
Yes, because my daughter was going out, and I didn't really want her to go because I felt it was getting late in the evening. And I told her she had to be back by 10:30. So it meant she had 10 minutes or 15 minutes to run up to see her friend who was living a little bit up the road.
Now, can you describe the noises that you heard more particularly? In other words, how many noises did you hear and for how long a period of time?
It was a series of like popping. There were, I would say, about a half a dozen of these pops, and then there was a little lag.
A little what?
A lag in the time, and then they started popping again.
Okay, by a lag in time, you mean there was a period of time where there was no popping noises?
Just a short period of time, and that's why I had thought that they were Chinese firecrackers.
Okay.
Because
What do you know about Chinese firecrackers?
I only remember from when I was a child, they had there was a series of little wicks, and as they popped along on the one side, and then it flipped to the other side, and then they started again. But there was a time lag in between from the time, I don't know if it's the same in this country, but from the time that they popped on the one side till they ignited on the other, there was a time lag. And that's why I had thought that these were Chinese firecrackers.
Was anyone else present in the room with you when you heard the noise?
Yes, my son.
Okay. Did your son want to call the police?
Yes.
Can I stop for a minute and ask that you sit down?
Oh, Your Honor, I'm
Just-
sorry.
Just sit down.
Okay,
Go ahead.
all right. Mrs. Crum, did your son want to call the police?
Yes.
And did you dissuade him from doing that?
Yes, I wouldn't let him.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Is it okay if I move this forward? Chrome, you lived south of where the Menendez home was at that time, is that correct?
Yes.
And these homes along Elm Drive are rather close together, isn't that true?
Yes.
The amount of space that separates you from the next house to the north is very narrow, isn't that true?
I don't know what you mean by very narrow, but it's not a huge amount of space. No.
Well, for instance, is it about the space where you are sitting to the wall to your right there?
To the next house?
Right.
From my house? No,
Yes.
it's more than that.
From the side that's nearest your house to your next door neighbor's side wall, how far would you say it is?
At least double that size, that amount of size.
And you say
What you're
that
talking about from where you are to that wall?
Yeah,
Okay.
double that space, correct?
yeah,
That's 15 feet from where the witness is to
Right.
the wall.
And you say the windows in your house were open that night?
yes,
Where were you in the house?
in my bedroom, which is the south. Wait a minute, let me get this right. The northeast side of the house.
There's an alley that runs in back of your house, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes,
And that is an alley that's toward Maple Street?
right.
And is that, were you nearest the back of the house toward the alley?
Correct.
And the Menendez home also faces back on that same alley, is that right?
Correct.
What were you doing when you heard these noises? Do you recall?
I was talking. I think I was talking to my son. I know I was talking to my son because he said, "I'm going to call the police," and I said, "You're not going to call. Don't be ridiculous."
And in terms of what you heard, these popping sounds, is it correct to say that these popping sounds were in very quick succession?
Yes.
As in pop, 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 pop?
Yes.
And I think you also indicated that there was somewhat of a lag, correct?
Yes.
But that was a very short period of time, correct?
Correct.
Almost instantaneously before you started hearing it popping again, correct?
Yeah. Not instant. But there was a time lag. You know, it's been 4 years, but I remember.
Sure.
I remember thinking that it was definitely the Chinese firecrackers. So definite was I. But because I imagined that it was igniting on the other side.
right, let me ask you this. Do you recall the next day after you heard these sounds that a police officer came to your door and knocked on the door?
Yes,
And you recall that at some point after the police officer knocked on your door that he had you come down to the police station and actually interviewed you about what you had heard that night. Do you remember that?
I never went down to the police station. My daughter did. I didn't.
Were you interviewed at some point on
Yes.
a tape recorder?
Yes.
Where did that interview take place?
At my house.
And that was the very next morning after you heard these sounds, correct?
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that your recollection of what you heard that night would have been best that next morning?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that your recollection was probably much better than it is today 4 years ago?
Oh, sure.
All right. I want to play you a little portion of your interview with a police officer so we can see if it helps you remember
Okay.
how the sequence of the shots went, okay?
Okay.
And next in order would be Exhibit 3, Your Honor. Yes, would be a tape recording.
It's right there.
And then while I'm doing that, Exhibit 4 would be a series of photographs. On the 7.
If you're going to refer to them individually, you can mark them 4A through, using designations of letters.
Can I approach a witness? Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
May be stipulated that the court reporter need not take down the tape recording.
Is that stipulated by all counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
By the way, this was an interview where your daughter was present and also your son, correct?
I don't have any recollection of.
Well, listen to this. This picks up right in the middle of
Okay.
a conversation, and you tell me if this is your voice on here.
Josh, you heard some sounds that you thought might be gunshots?
Yeah, in the middle of watching a movie and tribute for the clean air, clean I got shot down. And it was about halfway in between the movie. And it was around about 10. And I started hearing shots about 6 in a row.
And this is from you also, heard them?
I heard them too. And I thought they were trying to firecrackers because they were like,
And Josh, you looked out the back window and saw nothing, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just that portion, was that your voice on there?
Yeah.
And at least at that time, that is the very next morning afterwards, you characterized it as pop, 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 correct?
Yeah.
And is that, at that time, you were trying to be as accurate as to what you heard as possible?
Well, I wasn't asked about any time lag, so I mean, I know that they didn't. Was at the best of my ability at that point. I mean, I didn't know I was supposed to elaborate on all of that, but
Right.
it was a series of popping. But they came directly, and then there were some that lagged afterwards. But I was never asked about that.
All right, and does listening to that help you refresh your memory that the second sound of pops that you heard was very shortly after the first
Yes.
group?
Yes.
So they were all bunched in right close in time?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one house between your residence and the Menendez residence, correct?
Yes.
And Dan, could I approach a witness room?
Yes.
Thank you. Showing you Exhibit 4A, does that photograph depict your driveway where a blue truck
Yes.
is parked?
Yes.
And in the upper right-hand corner of that photograph is a white house. Is that the Menendez home?
Yes.
So that's how far your house is from the Menendez house,
Right.
correct? So it's fairly easy for you to hear those shots at night, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that another shot showing the distance between your house and the Menendez home?
Yes.
What was that?
That is 4B. And does 4C accurately show the distance between the Menendez home and the home right to the north of it?
Correct.
And is 4D a close-up of that same
Yes.
photograph showing the distance between the two homes?
Yes.
Is 4E a photograph showing the back alleyway behind your house?
Yes.
And you'll see there's, looks like a blue Volvo parked there?
Yes.
Is that blue Volvo parked right in front of your home? Sure.
It looks like it, yes.
Okay. And the Menendez home is in front of the blue Volvo where the first set of garbage cans are?
Right, next to the white guest house there. Sorry, next to the white guest house. There's a white guest house.
Is that another photograph 4F showing the same distance between the back of the Menendez home and your home, which is depicted
Yes.
in the lower left-hand corner where there's appears to be a white
Right.
fence?
Yeah.
And for G, does that show the distance between the back of the Menendez home and the house
Yes.
directly adjoining it, which would be 720
Right.
Elm Drive?
Right.
Thank you very much. You sell real estate?
Yes.
Do you know what your lot size is?
Do you know, I don't. I think it's 225, 90 by 225.
And is that about the same size as the lots on the street?
It gets a little bit bigger as the block goes higher.
As you go north,
Yeah.
they get larger.
It gets a little bit larger.
But in your block, that's about the block size?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, any cross-examination on behalf of the defendant, Eric Menendez?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mrs. Crom, did you speak with any police officers on the evening of August 20th?
Yes. That was the next day you're talking about?
No, this is the same evening that you heard the noise.
No.
And did you first speak with the police the next morning?
Yes.
And when did they come to your house?
6:30 in the morning, somewhere around there.
Did you speak with them at that time?
No.
Did you speak with them later?
Yes.
Approximately when was it that you spoke with him, with the police?
About 8:30.
Okay, and that was at your home?
Yes.
Did you become aware that either your daughter or your son had spoken to the police when they came to the house at about 6:30 in the morning?
So you asked, was I aware of that?
Did you hear anybody speaking to them when they first came? at
No,
6:30?
there was somebody knocking on the door at 6:30, and I figured I'm not going to bother with it, so I didn't answer.
And was the person that you spoke to later on that morning a person by the name of Edmonds, a Sergeant Edmonds?
Forgive me, I'm terrible with names. I don't know, it may have been.
Did the person that spoke to you take notes?
Yes.
And these were notes that were taken down as you were being interviewed?
You know, I don't remember, but I think so. I mean, I remember when they interviewed my daughter that they were taking a lot of notes, and I think that must have fallen off with
Now, were these notes being taken that you saw while they interviewed your daughter, was that at the same time as the tape recording was going on, or was that at a different time?
I'm not sure at which interview this recording was done, because I got interviewed quite a few times. And I really don't remember which interview I said what, except that I said more or less the same thing at every time.
In the first interview that you had that was at your house,
Yeah.
did the police ask you about hearing any noises?
Yes.
Okay, and was it then that you remembered the firecrackers that you heard the night before?
It was actually when my son said to me, because I never connected a murder with the sounds that I was hearing. And when I'd heard that there was a murder on the street, it was only when my son said, "Oh, Mom, that's what I was telling you. Those were shotguns." So I only then did I click what I was hearing as to what was going on.
Did you tell the police when you talked to them the next morning that you believe you'd heard 6 shots? Six sounds, six separate.
Yeah,
sounds.
I know it was in excess of 6. I mean, it was.
So you gave them a number that you recall, correct?
I believe it was in excess of 6. And I don't remember then. I mean, what I said.
And nobody showed you your notes or anything, right?
He gave me the notes. I don't know where they are.
Okay. In any event, you told them that you heard firecrackers because that was the best way you had of describing the sound.
Yes.
Now, let's focus on the time. You said that you were in your bedroom when you heard the firecrackers,
Yes.
and you were with your son Josh.
Yes.
And was there something on television?
Yeah, there was something about an aeroplane crash that he was watching intermittently while talking to me.
Now, when you heard the sound, did you look at the clock?
Not specifically at that time, but had been watching the clock all the time because I wanted my daughter back in the house, and her friend was late to pick her up.
So at the time you heard the sounds, had your daughter left yet?
No, not yet.
And do you recall looking at the clock when your daughter left?
Yes.
And what was it when your daughter left?
I think it was around 10:20, 10:15, 10:20,
Okay,
somewhere
so
in there.
it would be correct then to say that you heard these sounds before your daughter left
Yes.
at 10:20.
Yes.
And can you tell us about how long before your daughter left that you heard the sounds?
A maximum of 20 minutes, probably 10. I would, if you asked me to get more specific, I would say 10 minutes, somewhere. I think it was around 10:10, somewhere around there.
And your bedroom, I believe you told us, is at the back part of the house?
Yes.
Your daughter Jennifer's bedroom is at the front of the house,
Yes.
correct? Was it normal at that time of year for all the windows in the house to be open at night?
Yeah.
Okay, so that, do you know where your daughter Jennifer was when you heard
She
these
was
sounds?
she was in her front room, in her bedroom in the front, waiting for her friend to come for her. So she was watching out the window.
And she was watching directly on the street.
Yes.
Do you know whether or not she reported hearing anything?
She didn't hear anything, no.
When did you become aware that the Menendez family was living at 722 North Elm Drive?
Oh, a few months prior to that, they had sent round a flyer for tennis lessons, and I had suggested to my kids to go and take tennis lessons there.
Okay, so that was the first contact or the first knowledge that you had that somebody had moved into that particular house?
Oh, I knew the previous owner, so
But you had never met the Menendezes, correct?
no,
Had you ever seen any of the family
no,
during the time they lived there?
no.
And the flyer that was passed around, was that offering tennis lessons at the house?
Yes.
And that was something that you believe the boys had passed around? Or someone
I'm not
else?
sure. I'm not sure who was offering the tennis lessons, but I had, I just presumed it was the kids because I'd heard they were good tennis players, and I used to hear them on the court from my bedroom.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have nothing further.
Thank
Any
you.
redirect?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. You may sit down.
Thank
You're
you.
excused.
Thank you.
Judge, how does the court wish to handle photographic evidence? Would we move to admit that at this point?
We'll talk about that in just a little while. Let me see if the prosecution has another witness.
I do. Officer
Okay.
Butkus.
While we're waiting for the next witness, the bailiff indicated to me that there was a request by one of the juries or members of one of the juries regarding scheduling and wanting to know when certain days, if we know in advance when you won't be needed. I'll consult with counsel on that, and as soon as I'm aware of any such dates, we'll let everyone know and give you that information, and I'll provide you with a schedule as soon as I have some information about that.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you may be able to tell us on tape before
Michael Butkus, Michael Butkus.
Excuse me, I'm trying to get through Officer Butkus, what do you do for a living, please?
I'm a police officer for the city of Beverly Hills.
On August the 20th of 1989, were you also employed as a police officer for the city of Beverly Hills?
Yes, I was working patrol.
How long had you been a police officer at that time, sir?
Approximately 7 years.
And so, as of now, you've been a police officer approximately 11 years?
At that time, correction, I've been a police officer now for 8 years. 4 years ago, I would have been a police officer at that time for 4 years.
Right. On August the 20th of 1989, at approximately 11:47 p.m., were you in a radio car?
Yes, I was with a partner.
Okay, could you tell us your partner's name and please spell it for the court reporter?
His name is John Zernacki, Johnczarnocki, I believe.
Now, Officer Butkus, sometime around 11:47, did you receive a radio call which sent you to an address?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall from whom you received the radio call?
From the Beverly Hills Police dispatcher.
Was that Ms. Nye or male?
It was Ms. Nye.
And at that time, did you then proceed to 722 North Elm Drive?
Yes, I did.
When you got to 722 North Elm Drive, were you the first police unit on the scene?
Yes, my partner and I were in the car, and we approached that address in a southbound type direction, parking approximately 2 houses away from 722.
Did you also park on the west side of the street?
I don't recall the exact side of the street.
What did you do then?
I then exited the car with my partner, and on foot we approached the house.
What happened then?
We stopped for a moment. Approximately a minute and a half went by when I heard some screaming from the front of 722 North Elm.
Where were you physically located when you first heard the screaming?
I would be on the east curb. The house is on the east side of the street, so I was on the curb.
Okay. At that time, did you have a weapon drawn?
No, not just yet.
Did you know what to expect when you got there?
Well, receiving the call that there had possibly been a shooting, I didn't know exactly what to expect. So
Was that the total of the information that you had when you approached the location?
that was all we had.
So you heard some screaming, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you tell from where the screaming was coming?
It was coming from the front door of the house, 722.
Could you tell at that time if the door was open or closed?
I could not. The entire area was nighttime. Obviously, it was very dark. The streetlights were the only illumination, and the house was not illuminated in any way, any other light type of lighting. So it was very dark.
Was there any sort of impediment between you and the house?
Yes, there's a steel gate that surrounds the perimeter of the house.
Was any portion of the gate open when you first noticed it that night?
I believe there's a front entrance with swinging gates that one of them, I think, was open.
And what happened after you heard the screaming?
And then 2 individuals came running from the front door of that house towards the curb where I was positioned.
And at that time, did you make contact with those 2 individuals?
I made contact with 2 individuals.
And do you see them in court today?
Seated at counsel's table, defendant
What's
one.
he wearing? What color is he wearing today?
He has a pink shirt with a white sweater on.
Referring to the defendant, Lyle Menendez.
And do you see the other person?
Yes, other defendant in the blue shirt with the burgundy tie.
That's the defendant, Eric Menendez.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did you do next? In other words, did you tell them to do something? Did you do something? What happened?
Well, they were together. They came running out towards the front of the house where I was positioned. still yelling and screaming, and they made their way to the curb where I was, at which time I told them, believe I had a weapon drawn possibly, telling them to get down on the ground, both of them, at which time they both complied.
Now, when you say they were yelling and screaming, were both of them yelling and screaming?
I couldn't tell if both of them, I don't recall.
When they came out of the house, did you know who they were, what relationship they were to why you were there?
No, I did not.
Now, you told them to sit on a curb, is that correct?
I told them to just get down on the ground.
Okay, so in what manner did they, in fact, get on the ground?
They both went down onto all fours, and then later into a sitting position.
Okay, did you ever do what's known as prone them out?
I guess you could call that proning out on the curb area there, yes.
Could you tell the jury what proning out is?
Is when you ask a subject to get down on the ground, you're proning them out, meaning lay down on the ground with your belly on the ground and your hands and legs also on the ground, and hopefully with the face down.
Okay, did they in fact do that?
For a moment, yes.
Okay. After that happened, what did they do?
They got into a seated type of position where I tried to ask them questions to decipher what was going on.
Okay, and do you remember which of the two you asked, or did you ask both of them, or how did that work?
I just asked both of them simultaneously.
And where were they physically located? Were they next to each other? Was there any distance between them?
They're next to each other, maybe a foot apart.
Were they seated?
Yes, they were on the a grassy area on the curb.
Was that the grassy area between the sidewalk and the curb, or between the sidewalk and the house?
Between the street and the sidewalk, the grass median.
Okay. So you asked them questions, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
What kinds of questions did you ask?
I wanted to find out what was going on inside, if someone had been shot, if there was a suspect still inside the house.
And what did you find out?
At the time, they were very distraught, and they were uncooperative in giving any type of answers to that. They just kept saying the same old phrases over and over.
And what was the phrase?
Oh my God, oh my God. And this continued for a while, approximately 1 or 2 minutes, where I continued to ask the same questions over and over, at which point they were still moving from a seated position back to a all fours on the ground position, banging their fists on the ground. And I don't recall which defendant took his hand and pointed towards the house and continually kept saying, just go inside and see, just go see. That was the only type of response I got from them.
During the period of time that you were trying to converse with the defendants, did other units arrive at the scene?
Yes, there were other units at the scene.
And about how long after you first arrived was it that you noticed the presence of other units?
Almost immediately. There were other backup units there.
Okay. After one of the two defendants said, just go see, what happened then?
Then the sergeant on the scene approached me with a number of other officers, and due to the fact that we weren't getting any workable information from the two defendants, there was a necessity to go into the house to find a suspect or possibly someone who had been shot or injured.
Were either of the two defendants crying when you saw them?
Nothing that I would say was real crying, in my opinion.
Well, did you see any tears?
It was very dark. Their faces were a reddish color, but I don't recall seeing what I would say real teardrops coming off their face or anything.
Okay. Now, after you were told go see, did someone in fact go in the house?
Yes, the sergeant set up a number of a unit to go in and check the house, which I was a part of. There was a number of officers with the sergeant.
And so you went inside the house, is that correct?
Yes, with the other members to search the house.
Was someone left behind to stay by the defendants?
Yes, another officer took them over to, I think, a patrol car to be seated in. I'm not sure.
Do you know the name of that other officer?
I recall 4 years ago it was Officer Angel, who's no longer with the department.
Okay. And then you went inside of the house, is that correct?
We developed some type of plan, and then we, yes, prepared to enter the house.
And did you in fact go inside of the house that day in order to determine what had happened inside?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. May I have a moment, please? have no further questions of this witness at this time.
Cross-examination?
I just have a moment, Your Honor.
Officer, when you first met the two people coming out of the house, it's true, is it not, that they were very distraught and upset?
Yes.
And that's a description that you also told the grand jury in this case?
Yes, it
correct?
is.
That they were both very distraught and upset?
Appeared to be in that, yes.
And when you told them to get on the ground, they did so immediately, isn't that true?
Yes.
You said it was very dark that night, is that correct?
Yes. Well, describing the area around the house as being dark, no real illumination other than the street lamps on that street.
You remember at the grand jury proceeding, you were asked whether you saw any blood on either one, and you said, gee, it was too dark, I really didn't notice.
I was asked that, and that was my reply.
And is it true that your main focus when you first met up with the two gentlemen coming out of the house was to get into the house to see if there was any suspects in there?
Or the nature of the call was a shooting, so I was concerned that someone might be inside that had been shot, also to find if there was a victim that needed medical assistance.
And you don't know whether they were crying or not before you arrived, correct?
I don't know whether they're crying. No, I do not.
You'd never seen them before?
I've never seen them before.
And you don't know how they act when they're distraught and upset, do you?
No, I do not.
That's all I have, thank you.
Anything on behalf of the co-defendant?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Your next witness.
Your Honor, I have no witnesses for today.
All right, then we'll be in recess in a moment until tomorrow. Before I excuse both juries, let me say a few things to both groups here. As of now, you've just started to hear some evidence in the case when the first witness took the witness stand and began testifying, and you've heard so far 3 witnesses testify, and there will be many more before the case has been completely presented to you. And it's important that you keep an open mind on this subject until you've heard all of the witnesses and all of the evidence. And it's also important that you make your decision based only on the evidence that you see in this courtroom. There is a temptation, I'm sure, to go home and watch the TV and see what they report about this case and how it's covered on the television or in the newspaper. You must resist that temptation, however. It's imperative that you make your decision based only on what is presented to you in this courtroom, and the only way you can do that is to confine yourself to information that you obtain only from this courtroom. We'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock and have more evidence at that point. What I'm going to ask is that all of you leave your notebooks there, and the court staff will collect them. When you return tomorrow, the jury that is in the box, the jury for the defendant, Eric Menendez, if you would come into the courtroom and go into the jury room, and you'll be the jurors in the jury box this week. And the jurors for the defendant, Lyle Menendez, if you would go next door tomorrow, that's the courtroom right next door. It's apartment O, right here. And that's a courtroom that's doing civil cases, but they have a jury room in there, and they'll be able to put you in the jury room. The sheriff will meet you there and put you in the jury room until we're ready to have you come into the courtroom, and then we'll have you come in. So that'll be a place for you to gather until court is in session, and then we'll switch off with the other jury doing the same thing next week. So we'll be in recess now until tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and with the admonition to all jurors not to discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else or form any opinions about it. And we'll see you all back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Everybody in the audience, wait until the jurors leave and let the jurors out first.
But I have no objection either, unless the court does, to having him take the exhibit today in order to make it so that there's not other information on it. In other words, to release the exhibit to Mr. Burke.
All right, the Exhibit 3 will be released to the defense for the purpose of preparing a redacted copy of the tape, which contains only that portion that was played for the jury, and that when it is returned, will be substituted for Exhibit 3.
That's fine.
All right, and then it'll be received in evidence, and Exhibit 2 will not be received at this point since there is an objection.
Your Honor, I may withdraw my objection. I'd just like to talk to Mr. Burt.
All right, well, at this point, it isn't received. Exhibits 1 and 4 are received, 3 will be received in its redacted form, and Exhibit 2 is not received at this point. All right,
Exhibit 4, the photographs.
there's no objection to that, so it'll be received.
And Your Honor, as to photographs, would the court permit the photographs to be passed around at the time they're received, or do we wait until the end of the day to admit all exhibits at one time and then show them to the jury at some other point?
Yeah, unless there is something highly unusual about it, my view is that the exhibits will not be shown to the jury to be passed around. If there's some blown-up photographs that could be displayed, that's one thing, but it's too cumbersome with two juries to show photographs, everybody looking at photographs and watch the witnesses testify at the same time. So if you feel that you need these photographs and they're important, then you should have them blown up. I do note, however, that the photographs you've marked for A through G are not duplicated, so we have two juries. Are they being offered as to both defendants?
We can submit duplicates.
Okay, then you'll have to do that and keep that in mind in the future regarding any exhibits that you intend to offer. As far as the ability of counsel over here to see the witness, there was some problem with Ms. Lansing you couldn't see.
I still cannot see even with this position. I don't believe my client can see. Can you? Mr. Britt, can you see?
No, the only way I can see is by moving myself away from my notepad behind Ms. Abramson.
Well, we've had hearings before, and you folks were all seated at the table, and no one ever said anything about not being able to see the witness.
We did. We told you because we were usually at that end. And
You never told me you had a problem seeing it, and you certainly never brought it to my attention when we moved into this courtroom for this trial.
my memory differs from the courts. We could never see the witness from there. But I never complained because I always assume it's because of my stature. But Ms. Morrissey says she couldn't see the witnesses.
All right.
Also, Your Honor, on the
yeah.
pretrial motions, the person responsible for conducting the examinations, primarily me on the witnesses on the 1538.5, I was always seated toward the center where I could see. And Ms. Morrissey and Ms. Abramson did not have primary responsibility, although they stood up and went over and examined them on occasions. We did have someone in a position who was going to conduct a cross-examination who could see the demeanor of the witness. And of course, we can't do that with this arrangement.
All right. Well, obviously, if you had let me know of this concern before we commenced here, we would have dealt with it rather than informing me of it while the witness was on the witness stand. All right. Yeah.
I had one more thing, which
Yes.
is we had one less person. Detective Zuller was not in court, and so we shifted everything over that much further where we're in a new position here. So it's not something that we were aware of for a long period of time. This did just first arise, and we're bringing it to the court's attention.
All right. Is there any complaint or dispute or contention that there has been any denial of the right of confrontation by the defendant, Lyle Menendez, by the fact that there was some difficulty in seeing those first three witnesses?
Not up to this point, Your Honor, no.
Do you have any complaint in that regard, Lyle Menendez?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, we'll do something to deal with the situation. We'll take a recess here and discuss it further. We'll be in recess as far as the case is concerned until tomorrow at 9 o'clock.